Hello and welcome to your Chapter 8 lesson on doing sampling using Minitab. I'm currently in the PC version of Minitab Express, which is very similar to the Mac version of Minitab Express with some slight differences. I'm going to declick the navigator window since I will not be using it today and make my data window just a little bit bigger because there's not much I'm going to need in the session window. If you look at the top of the Word document attached to go with this video, you'll notice that I have the command codes for Minitab 17 and 18, as well as the ones for Express using both the Mac and the PC. My Mac has decided that it doesn't want to work today, so I'm doing this on the PC, and I hope that's going to work out okay. There's one slight difference in naming and what the Mac version of this is going to look like. So it says generate pattern data instead of pattern data. I'm hoping that won't confuse you, but it turns out exactly the same. So we're going to look at some sampling, talk about stratified sampling, and then how you might do sampling with or without replacement and why you would do that. So the first thing we're going to look at is a population um, where I've got these people with their color characteristics and some other characteristics like their shape as well. And I want to sample from this population. Specifically, I want a sample of size 9. So I'm going to do a random sample, a simple random sample, which is the simplest and nicest sample you could probably do. The reason why we like random sampling is it evens out all possibility of sampling bias by making sure that everybody in your population is equally likely to be chosen, and that prevents us from being biased in that way. So, like, everybody gets an equal shot, yo. Anyway, so the first thing I'm going to do is, since I have 30 individuals, I'm going to assign them an identifier numerically and then sample from that identifier. So I'm just going to just name them 1 through 30 because that should be the easiest way to do this. And I'm going to call that ID. And I like to name my columns because then I know where on earth they came from when it comes to looking back at my information in my notes. So I'm going to go up to data to create my random pattern data. And I want to go down to generate pattern data. Where is that? There it is. And then I want to select numeric. You also could do this with text, by the way. So if you like ABCD better, that's great. But since they're like in order, I thought numbers would be easier. Okay. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. We got to tell it where we want to start. I want to start at 1 and I want to end at 30. And each step size is set at 1. That means that as it's making this pattern of numbers, it's going to start at 1, and then since the step size is 1, it's going to go up by 1 to make the next one. So it's literally going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, going up by 1 each time until it hits 30. Cool. If you want repetition or pattern to this is how you would do that. So notice that it's got the option that, hey, if you want to list the numbers more than once, you can do that. So that's like if I wanted to do each number 3 times, like 3 times 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, and so on. That's how you would change it. So you'd put a 3 there. And if you wanted to list your sequence more than once, so as this is going to go through 1 through 30, if you maybe wanted to do that twice, like 1 through 30, 1 through 30, what you would do is change this to a 2. So there's a way you can do that. You can also make it not equally spaced. I almost never use this, and I don't think you will either. But if you wanted the option to not equally space your numbers, that's what you would change right there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK because this should produce my random numbers 1 through 30 for me. Oh, and it decided to not use ID. Usually what it'll do is just use the first one available, but since I named it already, whoopsie daisy, it did not. Oh well. It also will output for you like some information that you may or may not want. Anyway, so here's my numeric pattern data. Notice it does go all the way through 30. And so now I've got my identifier ready and set to go. Now I just need to randomly sample from it. So to do a random sample in Minitab Express, you go back to data as well, and then you select sample from columns because you have existing places that you want to sample from. And it's going to ask you, where do you want to take this data from? Well, my numeric pattern data I just made. Then it wants to know how big you want your sample to be or the number of rows that are going to be in your sample. In our case, we want a size 9 sample. And then it's going to ask you, do you want to do this with replacement or not? Remember, with replacement, that's I sample someone or I sample an item from my data and then I place it back in would be with replacement. So sometimes you'll want replacement, sometimes you won't. Sometimes replacement won't make a whole lot of sense. So for instance, if you had like a survey you wanted to do for one of your classes and you decided you're going to only ask 9 of your classmates, you wouldn't do replacement with that one because you might end up with the same person more than once and you wouldn't want to give the same person the survey like 3 times. So replacement doesn't make a whole sampling with replacement wouldn't make sense for that one. You would definitely that one without a replacement. But if you had something like, I don't know, like a bathtub full of M&Ms, because that's everyone's dream, or maybe just mine, um, and you were just trying to sample to get colors out of it, whether or not you put the bathtub, sorry, put the bathtub back in the bathtub is what I was about to say. Whether or not you put the M&Ms you just sampled, aka replaced them back into the bathtub, wouldn't matter at all because the population in that case is so large that you're sampling from, and what you're giving it, it just doesn't even matter to try to draw it from, you know? But if you had like a small bag of M&Ms and you're moving one at a time, what you draw could influence whether or not the next color is going to be more likely or not. And so therefore you wouldn't want to do replacement. See what I'm saying? Matters size wise, in my opinion. Well, that's not opinion, that's fact. Anyway, so we're going to sample without replacement in this case because I only have 30 people and I don't want to select the same person like 3 or 4 times. So there we go. These are my little people. Aren't they cute? Go ahead and hit OK. And there's my sample. So I get person number 2, Mr. 22, which is somewhere over here, 27, 19, ooh, 3. And then, like, I didn't get a whole lot of number. I got like a bunch of stuff that's high and just a couple lows. That's a weird sample. Oh well, that's what happens sometimes, and it's called sampling error. Good times. Now, let's suppose you wanted to stratify your sample. So I'm looking at number 3 now. To give you an example, if there were some characteristics in your population that you wanted to make sure that you accounted for in your group. So maybe you're looking at lodgings for your next conference and you made sure you wanted to look at both hotels and motels in the area. You might separate them into those 2 groups, hotels and motels, and then sample from those 2 groups. Here I've got something very easy I can separate by or stratify by, and that's color. So I've got blue, red, black, and black peoples in here. And what I want to do is I want to make sure I sample an equal number for each color to make sure that each color gets an equal representation. Because it could be that when I did this sample, I ended up with a lot of like, I don't know, red and black people, but not a lot of blue. You know, I don't know that for sure because I haven't checked this one, but you get the idea, hopefully. So the first thing I notice is that every color appears 10 times. So I'm going to make another numeric pattern of data from 1 to 10 and then sample from it 4 times to get my 4 sample, sorry, not 4 times, 3 times to get a sample for each color. So first I'm going to make a pattern data again. So I'm going to go back up here to pattern data, numeric, and now I'm going to be doing from 1 to 10, and I'm going to just do it once, and I'm going to hit OK. So there's my new pattern data of 1 through 10, and then I'm going to make one for the blues, one for the blacks, and one for the reds. So I'm going to sample from my column, numeric pattern 2, I want 4, and I want to do it without replacement. I'm going to hit OK. So I'm going to rename this one. This is going to be my blue group. And then I'm going to do it again. Sample from columns, pattern number 2, and I want 4. I'm going to call this my black group. And then lastly, I got to do it for red. So sample from columns, numeric pattern, I want 4, and then we'll call this red. So in case this is a little confusing on who you're going to select from here doing stratification, is that, so for blue, I want person number 8, who is right here, person number 9, person number 2, and person number 4. From black, I want number 4, so the 4th black one is 1, 2, 3, 4. The 10th one, so that's the very last one, the next last one at 9, and the second one. See how this is selecting? So if the colors here made something sensical for it, then, you know, this is what you'd get up to. And then I have this last little example for you of when you might want to use replacement or not. This is kind of silly because I've already talked about this, but that's what I get for getting off topic and totally just biffing this one. A very tight professor has 10 keys on her keyring. Him? Her. Oh, I wrote her this time. Yay, lady professors. And one of them is the key to her locked office door. I've totally done this, like not been able to figure out which key is the right one because I have way too many. She should sample the keys with or without, should she sample, wow, that's a question. Should she sample the keys with or without replacement? Well, if you did replacement, if you try a key and it doesn't work, you just throw it back in the pile and keep going. That means you might check the same key 3 or 4 times before you get to the correct one. That seems like a waste of time. We shouldn't do that. You should try one and then totally not put it back in your pile if it doesn't work. work. So in this case, we wouldn't want to replace it back into the population. We should definitely do this without replacement because it would make it faster. Alrighty, that's about all I have for you for this video. In your assignment this week, you will be sampling from a piece of text and then telling me how long the words are. So there's two steps you'll have to do. You'll have to sample to figure out which word it is in the text, and then figure out how long each of those words are, and then taking an average. So hopefully you remember how to do an average in case you forgot. If you go to statistics, where is that in here? Oh, it's because I've got it crunched. Okay, well, if you go to statistics and then describe, there's descriptive statistics that'll work for you, and then you can get like the mean and stuff in case you forgot. All right, hope you watch to the end so that you can get that tidbit. Peace out.